The house on Larkspur Lane arrived with a little fanfare and a great deal of dust. It was the sort of Victorian inheritance that people imagine in novels: high ceilings, crooked staircases, and a garden that time had decided to keep to itself. I expected creaks and drafty windows. I did not expect the portraits. They were everywhere, oval frames gathered in the hallway like watchful eyes. A stern woman presided over the drawing room. A child in sailor dress stood sentinel at the foot of the stairs, and a man with a severe jaw hung above the fireplace as if he had always meant the hearth to be his throne. For days, I told myself, they were simply painted likenesses, relics of relatives whose names I had yet to learn. Then one evening, returning from the market, I saw the child's head tilt. It was a subtle motion, a fraction of an inch, enough to unnerve but not to justify panic. I stood frozen, hands full of groceries, as the child's painted eyes slid to meet mine. The room smelled of lemon oil and old paper. The portrait smiled. I learned that the smile, like everything else in the house, kept its distance from certainty. I began to study them the way one studies astronomy: patient, methodical, accepting the possibility of error. Each morning I found notes tucked beneath coasters, in hollowed books, even under the lip of the mantel. How long since she blinked? Are all the portraits awake? The handwriting was unfamiliar but consistent, as if one person had been whispering to themselves for years. The notes recorded small observations. The man above the fireplace never moved below his left eye. The girl with the braid only blinked during thunderstorms. The stern woman nodded when the radio played a particular station. Patterns emerged. The blinking was rhythmic, influenced by light, temperature, and most disturbingly, company. In solitude, the portraits remained statuesque, but introduce a mirror or sit before them with another living person, and their eyelids would tremble to life. It was as if they were reading the room, learning its faces, cataloging the arrival of new presences, as if the house itself were composing a register of visitors. The history of the house offered no easy explanation. Deeds and diaries suggested generations of meticulous collectors, eccentrics who kept cabinets of curios and notebooks filled with the marginalia. A great-grandfather had been an optician, another relative a clockmaker. One ancestor, obsessed with capturing the essence of relatives, had been known to experiment with lenses and pigments. Yet the true mechanism, whether superstition, science, or something else, refused to name itself. There were rules, though: never look directly into more than two portraits at once. 2 is simply curiosity. 3 becomes interrogation. Never clap without warning. Sudden noise could startle them into intense focus. Never remove a portrait from its wall unless you intend to leave something of yourself behind. These rules were not written in authoritative script, but in the quieter hand of survival, an ink-stained recipe for living with things that observe back. As I adapted, the house altered me. I learned to move with purpose in its rooms, to announce myself at thresholds, to leave a token, a pressed flower, a scrap of ribbon, when I took a portrait down for cleaning. The portraits, in turn, seemed to accept a new ledger entry, a tidy, if reluctant, acknowledgement that a new steward had arrived. They blinked less often in my presence, or perhaps I blinked more, and habit became a bond. One night, during a rain that drummed like distant applause, the stern woman finally spoke. It was not a voice in the conventional sense, but a modulation of the air, a soft click like an old clock deciding it had run long enough. The words were not mine either. They belonged to the house and to everyone who had lived within its walls. Keep your eyes open. Learn the faces. Leave your mark. In that sentence, I heard both blessing and caution. The house asked for remembrance and demanded responsibility. Portraits that blink are not mere curiosities. They are keepers of attention. They require that we look as much as they will look at us. Inhabitants become witnesses, and in time, stewards of memory. When I finally placed my own portrait on the landing, not painted, but a simple photograph of a stranger I admired, the other faces regarded it with a strange politeness. It blinked on the first storm, like a newcomer hesitating with a borrowed name. My house, inherited and alive, had made room for me. The portraits continued their slow vigilance, a community of gazes in which each blink was a sentence in an ongoing conversation about who we are, who we were, and who we choose to be noticed by.